So the time is 1:15 now, and I would like to get started with this track number 3 of the Manufacturing Festival 2021 on innovation management systems. I've been looking very much forward to do this presentation today, and I really hope that we'll have an interesting track here and a lot of good discussion. Now, in terms of the agenda today, we have some very interesting people lined up for you guys, both primarily from Scandinavia, but also a company presenting from Germany, from the Vilo in Germany. So we have a pretty nice lineup of interesting people from both academia and industry. And as you can see from the agenda, the various names are indicated here, but I believe that the various presenters will present themselves throughout the various parts of the agenda. In terms of practicalities, I just, for the sake of formalities, I just want to inform you that this session will be recorded. We're going to do hopefully some interesting background information about this hopefully very interesting track, so that we could keep some of the insights as well afterwards. Then also I would like to inform you that the chat is open, and the chat function in Zoom should be available for everybody in the room. And my colleague Christopher Lerche will keep track of what is happening in the chat session, because as you can see from the agenda, we will have a plenum discussion facilitated by our Norwegian colleague Markus Bensnes. But in order to keep track of the various questions throughout the sessions, it would be good if you could type in your questions and considerations and reflections, etc., so we could have a fruitful joint discussion at that point of the agenda. I will also try to keep track of time throughout the presentations, because we have a pretty compact agenda. In terms of formalities, I'm situated in an office together with Søren from Business Region Midwest, who will help out in case something is going as we didn't intend it to do. So I'm looking very much forward to this session, to hear this drive this agenda that we have on innovation management systems. Now, just a few words, a very brief introduction to the background for why we are basically here today. So this is rooted in a relatively recent effort on international level to join forces and join insights and create an international dialogue around innovation management systems and the attached ISO standard that Magnus will present later on during the program. So this is a dialogue that was kicked off in a plenary meeting back in May 2019, and you could see sort of the founding fathers of this discussion on this slide. The reason why we are here today, and sort of the primary driving force behind it, was the project on what we call, with sort of a tough abbreviation, ICP for IMS, but it stands for International Collaborative Platform for Innovation Management Systems. And this was partly funded by Vinnova from Sweden and RISE. And we have a few presenters as well from RISE in Sweden in order to explain a bit more background for this. as you could also see from the presenters today, we have both a Scandinavian but also a Swedish bias. We could learn a lot from our Swedish neighbors in this, so I'm looking very much forward to sort of kickstarting that as well. But as you hopefully also will see, this is an effort that we want to expand to a broader range of countries and even go global at some point of time. So we have completed a pre-study, and we are in the midst of establishing this platform. And the hope is that in phase 3 that we will try to scale this up to a larger level internationally, and also in terms of the various sectors that we are touching upon. The pile of standards and new concepts that are coming from innovation management literature. I'm coming back to that point in a few slides from now, but the pile is massive. You could see a number of different standards and new concepts that are growing in academia and elsewhere within the decision makers, but they're not really sort of hitting the reality of the practitioners. But we are a group of researchers and practitioners that are quite hopeful that this will not be the case in the innovation management systems concepts. So the idea is to go global with this work that we're kicking off, and create some collaborations both in various countries and in various business areas. This could also be reflected in the slide that I have on presenting here in terms of the goals, and also in the key activities that we wish to spur throughout this project. Now, we have been working for some time now, and we have carried out various events both in Sweden and in Norway. In these days, it's clearly very online focused, but just to give you an indication that this is sort of a line of events and activities that we are initiating, and hopefully will continue over time. We are coming back to this in the concluding stage, because this is in a very open innovation or sort of invitation for people to get in on board and share their insights and share their ideas within the platform. So keep in mind that this is both a presentation of ongoing research and an ongoing project, an ongoing platform, but also an invitation for everybody to hop on board. Now, together with my good colleague Mats Magnusson, who is a professor of product innovation engineering from KTH in Stockholm, we have prepared a few slides just to give you sort of a rough introduction to innovation management systems. So this first, these slides that I'm going to show you now is an effort just to explain where are we from and what is actually the purpose of it all. Now, the work on innovation management systems should be understood on the background of the current status of both, you could say, both research and practice within innovation management. I think it's fair to say that we, as sort of a tribe of innovation management scholars, have been working within this field since back to the 1920s, where Joseph Schumpeter introduced innovation as sort of a founding principle of economic growth. And I think it's needless to say that the publications and the academic work that has been done in this field is massive. However, we also see that there's a tendency that research within the field has been very sort of fashion-oriented, driven by saying the same things with new buzzwords, and we also see that research is often a matter of finding statistically significance rather than actually making a real contribution and really change to the ultimate customers of our research. Because we sometimes, I know it's a very broad and a bit of a bold statement, but sometimes we are more interested in, as innovation scholars, innovation management scholars, to actually get publications out in the right journals rather than actually contributing to the field. At the same time, there's a growing focus on innovation management among practitioners, among companies, that innovation is essential. And we could also see from our case studies that there's a growing professionalization within the field. On the other hand, the research that we are doing is not really utilized because sometimes our research, as I mentioned before, is dependent on the last buzzword. And in companies, it's often depending on a few key persons. And by this is very fragile in that sense. As Mats is coming back to on some of the common slides, innovation is sometimes confused with invention and creativity rather than actual innovation. And that brings me to the next slide, where Mats will take over around the myth and reality in innovation management.
Thank you very much, René. First of all, it's a great pleasure to be here with you all. I'm also very much looking forward to discussing this with you. This is something we've been working on, this specific part on innovation management systems, quite recently, but when it comes to, for instance, the standard, there's a long history of this. But coming back to where René ended off here, as he mentioned, we know a lot about innovation management. And the surprising fact is that, well, we do not really see that reflected in practice. There are islands of excellence, fantastic companies doing fantastic things, but in general, it's surprising. And if we compare with other comparable areas like operations and production management, the gap between what we know and what we actually do is far smaller, I think. This is reflected also in some recent writings, reasonably recent writings, and I will not bore you with too many hardcore academic texts here, but I've selected two interesting articles that I think have a very important message to us in terms of what to focus on in innovation. And one of them is Scott Anthony's 10 Myths of Innovation. It's from Harvard Business Review in 2011, and I would say that it still holds. Among those 10 myths, there are 4 myths that I think are really important when we talk about innovation management systems. One is this misunderstanding or confusion that innovation is random. It's something that happens by chance. Yes, some innovation has happened by chance and some innovation still happens by chance. But actually, if we look at it, most innovation is the outcome of hard discipline and a lot of effort, not so much inspiration, but a lot of actually perspiration. We can measure and manage also innovation. I think that one of the reasons we have problems here is that we often deal with creativity and innovation together. And creativity, of course, is a fundamental part of innovation. But when we talk about creativity, it's also a lot of other things that do not have very much to do with innovation, which is the creation of something that is novel and valuable. We can create novel things that can be creative, but they are not necessarily valuable. And I always go to myself. I'm a researcher. Fundamentally, I've been doing research now on innovation management for quite some time, almost exactly 25 years, I think now. And when I look at my work, it's basically very disciplined and very structured. That's the scientific process, the scientific method. The only requirement from what I actually generate is that it's new. It doesn't even have to be valuable. Hopefully it is, but it's not really a requirement from academia. So I use a very structured approach. So do a lot of artists. and we come up with new things. It's not that structure, discipline, and following a process actually is bad for coming up with new things. And here is the confusion in innovation about innovation as an outcome. Of course, it has to be new, but innovation as a process can very much be disciplined efforts. Then, of course, sometimes we also look at this at the far too individual level, that, yeah, it's something that takes genius. Well, as I said, creativity is part of innovation, but it's only a small thing. First of all, innovation is teamwork. Very, very few things have come into the world with the help of only one person. So, of course, we can include, and we should benefit from creative people, inventors and others that may be in our organizations, but everyone can actually innovate. And actually, we've seen this in the book, The Innovator's DNA, where they say, yeah, we can explain some parts of innovation with the genes, 30%, but 70% of it actually depends upon how we do it and what we actually learn. And then one final thing, we are here talking about manufacturing festival. I personally really enjoy manufacturing companies. It's always interesting because it's so much more fun to see manufacturing than to see innovation. People today looking into a computer normally. We should remember we have a lot of technology here, but still innovation isn't something that just happens in the R&D lab. And once again, I would like to stress that innovation is something that actually should be the task of anyone, even our consumers and customers can actually give us valuable input. Renee, we can shift to the next now. I will tell you also a little about another somewhat more recent paper from Sloan Management Review from MIT, which also then gives us some really key insights that I think are important and are actually the underpinnings for why we are talking about innovation management systems. As I mentioned before, the definition of innovation, there are many, but the one I prefer at least is that innovation is something novel and valuable. So it doesn't have to be extremely novel. It could be incrementally novel, somewhat novel. But the key thing is, if it doesn't create value, it's not innovation. Working at a technical university with a lot of engineers, I sometimes see this when they're creative engineers, not only artists are creative, come with something new and it remains an invention because it is new. Maybe there's even some functionality, but unfortunately it wasn't valuable. The value part, we really need to see that. And that, of course, leads us to see that this could not just be a bottom-up process where everything that is new is interesting and good for us. No, we can actually be much more specific about what value we want to create and use that as a guidance in our efforts to create the new products and services. Also, innovation, sometimes we then think that it's always best to be first to initiate something. No, it's not. As I mentioned before, innovation can be both incremental and more radical or disruptive, but really it should be something that fits with our organization. Some organizations shouldn't be too radical in their innovation. They actually benefit more from incremental innovation. And normally it's a mix of these two, of course. As I said before, some individuals are really important here and we shouldn't antagonize them. But the really important thing is not to depend on the single individuals. Single individuals come and go in companies, even if in many Scandinavian companies they actually stay for quite some time. They do not actually constitute the intellectual capital of a company. They are people coming and going, contributing to the organization. We need actually to build this into the organization and build structural capital that generates innovation. And we see that some organizations that are really good at creating these systems and structures that support all the individuals in their innovation activities in companies, they are the ones who actually do not depend on single individuals. People can come and go, and the company continues to be innovative. But then, of course, what does it really take to build these systems and structures? And one really important thing there is not to look only at the beginning of innovation. I mentioned I have worked with innovation management for 25 years. Out of those, I've been studying ideas and idea management for 15 years. That is a very exciting thing. But if I should be really honest, as I also work as a consultant sometimes, if I go to a company and they want to have help with innovation, I often hear we should start with an idea management system. Very many companies do that. It could be a good starting point because you then start talking about innovation, but it could also be dangerous because it could mean that, yes, you tick the box innovation. We have generated more ideas. Ideas are not innovation. Ideas are a fundamental part of innovation. They are the starting point of all innovation. But ideas should be connected to the real value. And this means that actually the ones generating new ideas need to be in connection with the ones who really put the ideas to use. We need to create a short circuit here in the organization so that the people who actually really know customer value can talk to people who are full of ideas, maybe sometimes also know a lot about technology. And once again, I would like to stress that really there's not one size fits all here. Innovation, the outcome in terms of innovation that we want in one organization can look very different from another one. It depends upon what is actually strategically desired in that organization. Nevertheless, the real trick here in order to stay ahead of competition is, of course, first of all, to have a clear idea of what we want, but second thing, then to actually create the system that works for us, where we connect all the different people needed to innovate in a structured and systematic way. And we can go on to the next one. So if I would just give you one message here, is that innovation management needs to be more systematic, more disciplined, and more systemic to actually contain all the necessary parts that are needed. In particular, it's really important to connect ideas to real customer value and to connect that to the strategy, to the resources we have at hand, and of course the processes. So we can move on to this one, to the next one, to be a little more specific. We have the title Innovation Management Systems here because it stresses, first of all, the systemic nature that we have on innovation, and also that a system often also comes with a systematic approach. We see that, of course, system thinking is not new to innovation. If we go back to the 80s, we see a lot of ideas about systems. And we do actually use the term systems a lot in innovation studies in general. But very many of them have talked about national innovation systems and policies, not so much at the corporate or organizational level. We also talk a lot about ecosystems. I will not go into that today. I think most of you have heard that innovation ecosystems, that's new and hot. It's important, of course. We are, of course, innovating in a system of collaborating partners, suppliers, customers, and so on. I'm not always fond of the eco part here because I think it may give us the wrong ideas about what business is like, but it's always so friendly. Nature is a nasty place, and so can business be. There's a lot of competition and things that eat each other. So it's a good idea to talk about innovation ecosystems, but maybe we just need the innovation systems. But also what we want to focus upon here is not only the external partners, but primarily how do we set up the system inside an organization? And this is something that, surprisingly enough, is not very well researched. And we see that actually this may be a missing link between all the knowledge we have and making it possible to actually put that to good use in organizations. Because unfortunately, as René mentioned, very many attempts to deal with innovation are dealing with using one new method or focusing on one part of the innovation process or the innovation process without a strategy and so on. And we see the need, which is maybe not so easy for researchers because that's not normally the way we think of things, to make synthesis and aggregate things. But in this case, I really feel that that is what we should do at this point in time. We know so much about innovation management, so let's make sure that we contribute to making it happen, and we can move on. So what are we then doing? René has already mentioned something. As I mentioned before, we need to be more systemic and systematic. That is because innovation, just like when we talk about supply chain, can be seen as a critical chain of activities. That it's not enough to generate a good idea. If no one can actually then take that idea and start to test it out, and in the end see if it's actually valuable or not, it doesn't really help us. And we can see that we can also have things before ideas. How do we influence people's ideas so that they think of something that is valuable for the organization? What insights can we induce into the process? There are lots of activities in innovation. It normally takes time and it's complex. And basically, if the chain is broken, we will not get the desired innovation. And as I said, this is something we know a lot. There are some fantastic articles from the 80s already talking about the need for more holistic or systemic approaches to innovation management. We have picked this up together with a lot of international colleagues. So quite recently, there was a book, the Routledge Companion to Innovation Management. Magnus Carlsen and I, we were really happy to have one chapter in here, and I know that René has made it available to you. It's open access, so anyone can read it. Really trying to look into this, why we need a systems approach to innovation management, and also that it's actually not that new. There have been many different attempts before. What we see is different now is that, first of all, there seems to be much more attention to innovation in many organizations. Second thing is, of course, that there is a standard, an ISO standard, which Magnus will tell you much more about. And that has been the interest for us to actually see how can we utilize the notion of innovation management systems, and also in connection with that, the ISO standard, to actually make innovation more doable in a lot of organizations. And right now, we will also come to that later, my colleague Ingrid Chilander, who is managing our project ICP for IMS, that's impossible abbreviation. She will tell us a little more, but one of the things we are doing in relation to that project is to actually write a book with case studies of leading examples. And we have some of them here today, and I'm very much looking forward to that. René, we can, I think, go to the last one. And just to give you a flavor here, I will not go into the standard here because Magnus is much better at doing that. But just to give you an idea, what do we mean with an innovation management system? Well, it's basically then, as all systems, a set of components and their interrelationships. And we know most of these components quite well. The key thing is actually how we put them together, the systemic part. And there are, of course, some really important things here. First of all, we should have in mind that the whole idea of innovation management is not to create something new because it's new, it's to create value for companies, for customers. And that means that we should probably think quite carefully about what kind of innovation is needed for us. What intent should we have? Of course, we can always think of a lot of the activities that are central to innovation as a process. In this case, they are in the middle. It's about identifying opportunities, creating concepts, validating those concepts, develop solutions, and deploy solutions. It's not only about generating ideas, it's going all the way from the beginning to the end when we actually hit the market and the customers with something new and valuable. as you see here, it's not always a straight or linear process. It can be quite iterative. It can also include a lot of failure. It probably should include a lot of failure as well. But this, of course, this process and these activities take place in a context. And here we can see below, we see that it's supported by all the resources, the competencies, and all other types of support that we do. And that is something that, of course, also is continuously moving, continuously improving. And we can see that as a PDCA circle where we can actually see, are we actually becoming better at innovating? What is it that works, what doesn't work? And we should also not forget, and I think I've already touched upon that, that of course, innovation doesn't happen in isolation. It's something that very much happens together with others in collaborations with different partners. And it is also very much influenced by both strategy and culture. And here we see that leadership and a clear idea of where we want to go with our innovation plays a fundamental role. This is just an example. And every organization may, of course, consider the ISO standard, given that a lot of thoughts have gone into it, but it may also be that it doesn't fit perfectly with all organizations. And we also see, and I look forward to some examples here, other organizations that on their own have developed their innovation management system. And in many cases, I think that is the way how you really get it to work, is to find out what it should look for your specific organization. Having said that, I would like to conclude here, but I very much look forward to contributing to discussions and questions later on. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mats, for a great introduction to IMS. I could see that several of you have found the chat function, and do feel free to fire away in the chat. We are looking forward to that and wrapping up in the discussion. Without saying more, I would just like to hand it over to Magnus Carlson from RISE.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Renee. Thank you, Mats, for the introduction. My name is Magnus Carlson. I'm representing RISE here, the Research Institutes of Sweden, but I also have connections to KTH, the Royal Institute of Technology, and I've also been involved in standardization of these frameworks that we're talking about here today, and being connected to the Swedish Institute for Standards, SIS, as well. So let me take a few moments and pick up where Renee and Mats introduced us to the topic of innovation management systems. And one way to address that is through the standardization work that has been going on for quite a few years now. And now it starts to proliferate, it starts being used in organizations so that we also can study it. So that is one way to look at ISO 56002, the guidance standard for innovation management system, when you're trying to address this field and to address the myths and the challenges that we have outlined so far. There are a number of reasons of why this is happening, and we already touched upon that. Here's another way of capturing that in a very simple way. There are high expectations of innovation everywhere in society today. This is a study by McKinsey a couple of years ago, but there are several studies again and again saying that innovation is extremely important at all levels in organizations and in society. But the second figure here tells us about that there is a huge amount of dissatisfaction in this space. We are not achieving the innovation that we do feel that we have the potential in achieving. So at the same time, and what we just heard as well, is that we know a lot about innovation management and the conditions for effectively managing innovation work. So we have a lot of research-based knowledge. But for some reason, we see that we are not using all that knowledge in organizations. Instead, we are a little bit plagued by the myths, by the fads, and so on, that also was mentioned just now. So that we have this issue of reaching out with the knowledge, with that comes from the discipline, and making sure that we can make practical use of it. So when we look at the guiding frameworks, the standards we're talking about, that is one way of helping to package what we know, putting it into a framework that could facilitate practical use in organizations. So that's where we see that the standards are coming in and could be part of that facilitation and put the knowledge in use approach. There's also one other interesting thing here is that it helps to create a common language, because there is a terminology effort being made by the standardization community so that we can kind of gravitate towards a reference framework and a common language. So those are kind of the two main contributions of this work. And it has been going on for quite some time. We started already 12 or 13 years ago on the European level. And before that, Spain have had standards in this area before, but they brought it to the European level. We had the first frameworks being published in 2013. Then at that point, it was raised to the international level where ISO kicked in under the leadership of France. And then it took another couple of years, and in 2019, we had the first standard in this 56,000 series published, and that was 56,002 on innovation management systems. Now, many people react when we talk about standards and innovation. These are two disciplines that has been in organizations for a long time, but they have not really crossed paths before. So these are two worlds, standards and innovation. What do we make of that? And very often we get the reaction that standards would kill innovation and so on. But think about the standards in this case, about a guiding framework that will help top management in an organization to effectively lead and organize innovation efforts. If you will, it's about removing the barriers so that we can get more innovation for the investment that we have. So that is kind of the mindset. In the simplest form, it's a checklist to enable to be more systematic and more systemic when it comes to innovation work. So I mentioned that there has been a number of people involved in this. Over 60 countries has been active during this work, as well as a number of organizations. And you can see that there is the OECD, there is the World Intellectual Property Organization, there are a few organizations from the United Nations and so on that has been kind of tapping into this work, being interested to see, can we use this for our different purposes in our organizations? So there has been broad participation, and that is really the strength of this work, that we now have something that is commonly agreed, a baseline, if you will, and it will be useful both for academics to critically assess and understand, does it really help? And for practitioners that can get guidance and improve their innovation capabilities, take it one step further. So let me just briefly show the frameworks we have here. In the center, we have ISO 56002. That is the innovation management system that Mats briefly walked you through. On the left-hand side, we have ISO 56000. That's the terms and definitions. It also includes the innovation management principles. And that is not to be forgotten, because that is connected to the systems approach and provides us with the necessary vocabulary and the common language that I talked about. On the right-hand side is a more practical handbook that can help organizations to do assessments of their innovation management capability. And that is produced by SIS, the Swedish Institute for Standards. There are many more frameworks, but I wanted to highlight these three. Let's just look very quickly into the first one, terms and definitions. Okay, there is a definition of innovation in here, and Mats talked a little bit about that. And basically, it's something new that realizes value. So newness and value are the two kind of key elements in this definition. Second is that anything can be innovated. We wanted to create a definition that was very inclusive, so that we could include products, services, process, model, methods, and so on. So anything can be innovated, basically. And then value. We talked about that. Value is really the key here, realizing value. And value can be of different sorts. It's not only financial value, it could be non-financial, for example, a user experience, social value, and so on. And on the left-hand side, you can see kind of the more technical definition that has been provided by the ISO work. So an innovation is something new, is a new or changed entity realizing or redistributing value. Another thing that could be interesting to know about here is that in the outset, we created a couple of innovation management principles. We asked ourselves, what are the success factors for doing innovation work in an organization or in collaboration with other organizations for that matter? And we came up with 8 principles that were fundamental to really make sure that you are doing innovation management in an effective way. So the first one is the focus on value. We talked about that. It's not about the ideas, it's about the value. And surprisingly, many organizations are kind of lax upon that. They are not articulating the value that they are seeking to provide early on in their projects. There are several others. Let me just touch upon a few more. Managing uncertainty, number 6. Very important. That says something about what we're dealing with here and why this discipline is unique. We need to navigate a new landscape. We need to discover and explore. So we need the tools to do that because we cannot gather facts up front. We need to create our own data. And for doing that, we need to explore and exploit insights. That's number 5 here on this slide. Meaning that we need to understand not only the trends, the opportunities, challenges that we find out there, but also dig deeper to understand user needs, whether they are articulated or unarticulated. And the final one is about the systems approach. We need to realize that we cannot realize innovation, we cannot realize value from innovation activities unless there are several factors coming together to help us to do that. So the systems approach, where we integrate all these different elements, I'm not going to repeat them much, walk you through this slide, but it's about having the strategy, the processes, the right resources, the right outlook, and so on. So these are the key elements of the innovation management system. To round it off, why is this important? Well, we do get a common definitions and a common language. We get a framework that is agreed upon throughout a large group of people. And this also helps to enhance the importance of innovation management discipline within an organization and even in society. So there are a couple of key insights to bring with us here when we are putting this in the standards perspective. So the hope is that the standards will help us to make sense of the learnings that comes from understanding the science of innovation. This is an image from Gartner that came out a few years ago, kind of showing that after a while, when we're kind of on this learning curve, the end game is really that innovation is embedded in all our business and management practice. It is in an organization, so that it is taken for granted a critical discipline within the organization that is anchored and that is managed, that is measured, and that is appreciated. So by that, I'm a little bit over time here. Sorry for that. I'll hand over to the next speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Magnus, for doing what I think is close to a mission impossible, to do such a brief presentation of a very broad and complex ISO standard. But I really sort of think you touched upon the most important things. So thank you very much for that. Now the next point on the agenda is the first case study that we have, and we are so fortunate that we have Sven Grafe with us, who's head of innovation management at the Vilo Group in Germany. And without further ado, thank you very much for being with us, Sven, and we look very much forward to your presentation.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I hope my sound and picture and everything is fine, so that you have an enjoyable presentation from my side. So
it's very good.
Perfect. Good. So thanks for having me. Sorry for doing this in English, but my Scandinavian language skills are really, really bad. So I prefer to do this in English. My name is Sven. I lead the corporate innovation management team at Vilo. I've been working in innovation management for 20 years. So before the term was coined, I was in teams thinking about how to design innovation processes in companies. And since then, I've been addicted to this topic. And today I'm happy to show you how we manage innovation at Vilo. And I just learned that it's our innovation management system. We call it landscape, but let's get to that later on. So just for you as a information, what is Vilo? What is Vilo about? Well, we are among the leading companies for producing, manufacturing, and sales of pumps. And we do that in all kinds of different sizes and applications. What is common to all of the pumps we said is that we focus on pumping water. So you will not find us in major industrial applications such as food processing or something like that. We focus around the topic of water. So we take care about building services, which is distributing water in the building. And once we have it in the building, we take care about getting it back into the sewage plants. And this is what we call water management. And in the industry sector, you find all the products you need for cleaning the water and to turn it into drinking water again. So that is Vilo. That is what we do. We're Dortmund-based, but we've got locations, sales offices, manufacturing sites all over the world. Germany, France, India, China, Russia, even Sweden, USA, and South America. So. Talking about innovation. Our innovation journey started back in 1928 when the grandfather of our current owners invented what we call the first circulating heating pump in the world. So he had the idea of pumping hot water through the building in order to heat the building. Right? A couple of years later, we were among the first to invent the first maintenance-free circulator. So we got rid of the part that used to break down and build the product right into the fluids. So we would have better conditions for the motors and stuff like this. We were among the first ones to have that. Our latest innovation is what we call the Stratos Maxo. It is a pump with high level of connectivity, with algorithms running in the clouds, with data being transferred from A to B, and all the stuff, you name it, Industry 4.0 ready, everything's on board. Right? So the question is, from innovation management point of view, what changed from back the old days to 2080, 2021. And I would say it's the fundament of innovation that changes. So what you see on the left-hand side are one man's innovation, right? We earlier heard from Mats this challenge of innovation is a one-man show where this one guy is or one woman is who has a bright idea and then brings it into the market. That may have been valid in the past. But today we do have a different situation. Just look at this product. It's way more complex. So this first circulator, it was a completely mechanical thing, right? Today, a pump, it's basically a computer with an impeller, right? So you have the mechanics, you have electronics, you have software. You all of a sudden have a colorful display. You have connectivity on board, like how to transfer data to a smartphone, how to get the data into the cloud, what to do with the data in the cloud. You have software engineers running algorithms and stuff like this, right? So on the easy product of the past, there's roughly maybe 1, 2, 3 patents in that. Our Stratos Maxo, the 2080 product, it has more than 50 patents in it. While the 1928 product was a one-man innovation, it took a whole R&D organization to invent the new product, right? So what, for me, modern innovation management is about orchestrating all the different people, stakeholders, disciplines you have in your organization and outside to really enable innovation. Our approach to that is what we call the innovation management landscape, right? And within the next minutes, I'll briefly walk you through the different elements of this. And maybe later on, if there are questions or details, just get back to me, or maybe in the open discussion, I will be available there. Yeah. Let's start. What you see at the top are Velo's strategic goals. And surely with innovation and innovation management, we refer to these and contribute to the fulfillment of these. So that's why we put them on the map. Down in the green line, you will see the slogan, all you need to make your innovation easier. This is why we do this. This is the purpose of our innovation management activities. On the right-hand side, you see different portfolios we use at Velo. It's a competence portfolio, technology portfolio, patent portfolio, and these then translate into the product portfolio of our different business units, right? And here's the one unique thing. At a lot of companies, innovation starts there. So you start with an innovation project, go for it, and see where this ends. We do not believe in this approach. We think that there's a lot more to do before starting a project. The idea behind is efficiency. When we talk to our colleagues in production facilities, they say like, we are happy if we are only at the mistake rate of 1 in 1,000. And then we from innovation management come and say, we are happy if 1 in 100 products is an innovation success. This, of course, does not work. So what we want to do with all the stuff we do in front of actually starting an innovation project is to make sure that this innovation project will pay off at the end. So all of you see on the right-hand side in the portfolios, that's as much about the execution. Here, KPIs such as time to market, project duration, and stuff like this count. On the left-hand side, it's all about identifying the right innovation potentials. What do I mean with that? So let's start with the steering of the whole innovation process. We from the innovation management team spent quite some time thinking about what the future will look like, right? So which new features do we need? Which new products do we need in order to fulfill future requirements? Getting back to the product I showed you earlier. So the innovation project I showed you was launched in 2018. Usually we will have products in the market for 10 years. So back in 2015, 2016, when we started this innovation project, we needed to have a clear picture what the customer requirements will be in 2025, 2028, 2030, right? So that we back then are able to adapt the products to the upcoming customer needs. This only works if we have an understanding about what will the needs in the different applications be in future. To define those, we align along 6 global megatrends, which is water shortage, globalization, climate change, digitalization and technological process, energy shortage, and urbanization. These are the 6 megatrends that guide our whole organization. So in everything we do in the organization is aligned to these global megatrends, right? This also applies to our innovation strategy. This applies to the innovation scenarios we create. That is, we in a company speak the same language about the future. Right? Once we have a picture from the future and derived innovation potentials or innovation gaps from this, we start to gather information. Technological radar, competition analytics, and even environmental radar are the 3 core elements we use there. Right? But when I talk about a technology radar, from my innovation perspective, it might be something different that you in the first place may think about. So I do not develop a technological radar for core components of our products. I mean, we've got a whole department just taking a look at motors, right? I trust these guys know their job well. They do a perfect job, and they know what the future trends in motors will be like. So the trends we from the innovation management team take a look around are more on a unexpected level. Let me explain that. So this is Apple. I said, Jesus, why does he show Apple in a presentation about pumps? I think in all industry goods, and I mean with pumps we are industry goods, we have to take a close look at what's going on in consumer goods. Because what these guys manage is that they have the same interfaces across all of their devices. Right? It does not matter if you have an iPhone, a MacBook, a tablet, whatever. The interface is always the same. You will always have this line of shortages at the bottom. You have those apps. They all look quite similar and stuff like this. We from Vila, for example, come from a organization which used to be in different product clusters. And each of these product clusters, for example, had their own UI. How are the different menus for setup design and stuff like this? This used to be perfectly fine in the past, but today we see the customers claiming, come on, why is that different? It's still your product. And where is this coming from? It's coming from consumer industry because they know it from Apple, from Google, and the other competition, right? And something else is happening. People are used to colorful touch displays. We also see that for pumps. All of a sudden, the people want color displays in pumps in their basements. There's seriously, from a useful perspective, that does not make sense. If everything works fine with the pump, you will never look at this display, right? But the people just claim for it. The customers claim for it, and we're happy to save it. But this is the point. So consumer electronics is having a huge impact on industrial goods as well. And in the trend radars, we look at those input factors that not necessarily are on the agenda of our colleagues. Let's take a look at the competition analytics. I think it's clear. That's easy. That's clear. So let's take a look at the environmental radar. And there's another story I want to share with you. So I live in the beautiful city of Münster. Whenever you're in Germany, feel free to come around. It's really nice here. It's a young town, a lot of students around. Just come by. We've got a beautiful historic city center. And this historic city center holds a shopping street, and the rents on this shopping street are among the top 15 all over Europe. So if you want to have a shop there, it's really, really expensive. The building you see there used to be a bank, right? It's located right at the end of the shopping street, and it used to be a bank. So banks in 2020, they are not that successful anymore, or they do not need that much office space anymore. So the bank moved out, and this building was for rent. They renovated it, and who moved in? It is Zalando. You may know them. They are the biggest German online shop for clothes. Right? So an online company moving into a physical space. And they do not bring their usual offers. They do it as an outlet. So all the stuff they do not sell online, they sell offline in this shop. Okay, where's the link to pumps? Zalando is a data-driven company. Right? When you log onto their webpage, they measure everything they can measure about your behavior online. Right? They want to apply similar analytics to their offline business. So the question we have to answer is, how do we sell our products to a data-driven company? This is something completely new, and this comes up with new feature requests about our products. So we take a look at the environment and what's going on at a brighter scope and derive from that features we need in future. Right? Because Zalando won't be the last online company moving into physical spaces. Talking about participants, and we've early on, Mats already ventured into this. Whom do you involve in innovation? Maybe inside your company or even outside. We see 4 different dimensions, which is our employees, strategic partners, customers, and the crowd. So open innovation. Right? Each of these is important, but each of these at different levels or in different roles in this all innovation approach. Right? Let's start with the employees. So traditionally, innovation also at Vilo was very much R&D based, right? So you've got your engineers, they've got an idea, go for it, we will sell it to the market, all fine. But it's changed, right? Ever since the availability of the internet and about customers, we have to change from a technology-driven R&D approach to a customer value approach, right? So we started to involve more and more people in all this innovation thing, right? It's project teams, it's product management, it's marketing and sales, service, production, and also non-headquarter functions, like all the different subsidiaries we have around the world. Because on the left-hand side, so on the R&D side, you have the technical experts. They know how to realize those functions. On the right-hand side, you've got the people who are in everyday contact with the customers. So they've got the knowledge of what is needed in the market. The question you have to answer today is, how do you get the information from there into your innovation teams? And the usual way would be like, okay, he talks to him, and the sales talks to product management talks to the project team, and project team talks to R&D. I mean, seeing this picture must be clear for everybody that this just does not work. All right? There are so many biases inside. This is unlikely that the unreflected opinion from non-headquarter functions will end up in the R&D department. So what you need is a direct channel between all of these. Right? We at Vilo established what we call our innovation platform. So everybody at Vilo is invited to share his ideas, his new findings about innovation potentials on a common online platform. This platform is available for every employee at Vilo worldwide. Everybody has access to this, and everybody's happy to share his or her ideas. Right? Vilo, we are a roughly 8,000 people organization worldwide, and each month 1,500 colleagues log into this platform to see what's going on. Right? That way, we establish a direct link between those people who have the information and knowledge about the customers with those people who have the knowledge about technologies. So what is possible on this platform is that we bring together those people. So there's somebody saying, I've got this new sensor, doesn't make sense to bring it in the product. Do we solve any customer pain with that? At the other end, we have somebody who could give a decent answer to that. On the other side, we have customers claiming this is way too difficult to set up or whatever. And at the other hand, we've got the engineers who need this information in order to improve the setup features, right? So this is one important feature of our whole innovation landscape. Let's move to the next box, which is strategic partner. And earlier I showed you this picture about these outdated heating pumps and the new ones. And I said, okay, one difference between is that on the left-hand side were one-man innovation, and now they are team or community innovation. Right? Let's talk about strategic partners. And the products on the left-hand side were standalone products. So you would put them into your heating circuit, and it would pump and rotate, and all fine. As I said earlier, we now have a product that is connected to the cloud, and it works in ecosystems. So all of a sudden, it's not anymore your single pump. It's the pump communicating with the valve communicating with a tap. It's the whole hydraulic system in a building communicating with the wastewater plant and saying, okay, in 1 hour there will be, I don't know, we are in a stadium, there's halftime in the stadium, watch out, water's coming, right? So all of a sudden, just through the connectivity of the product, it's not your standalone product anymore, but you're automatically in an ecosystem. And when you're in an ecosystem, you have to strategically look at the partners you're going with, right? May it be from when you're in a smart home, is it either Google or Apple or whoever it is, to like who's the best company to develop, I don't know, what ecosystem product you need. And this not only applies to pumps, this almost applies to any product, because soon every product will be connected to the cloud, right? Talking about the crowd, the third point of this, you may think it's just pumps we're doing, but with pumps we're in a very sensitive topic. One is water supply, so how to supply people with fresh water, and the second one is heating. So, and what we see there is that more and more startups evolve in this topic. The two guys you see there, they invented a new heating system. And their pitch is really, really easy. What they say is the internet won't go away. All cloud services won't go away. So in future, we will have more and more servers. These servers produce heat. Why not put the server into the basement of your house and use it for heat production for your heating system, right? So they invented a heating system based on servers that now supplies their home with hot water. We have to look out for stuff like this, because this is competition coming up outside our traditional competitors, right? So crowd has two effects. One is you have to watch out for good ideas. The second one is you have to watch out for unforeseen competitors. What we do, our approach is there, instead of fighting these, we want to work with them together. So we built what we call the Wincubator. The Wincubator is our link into the startup world. So whenever there's somebody who says, okay, I've got something interesting with my startup that may be interesting for Velo, or I need to involve some kind of pumps, or I do need knowledge about the pumps, they're happy to connect with us using the Wincubator. This Wincubator is linked into this idea management platform I showed you earlier, so we internally can ensure that the ideas are then located to the right people. And the final step, when we gathered all the information, so we have a picture of the future, we gathered information, we got the right people inside, ideated about it, is that we have an idea management process. So because as I show you those 4 boxes we have on the participants, if I reach out to all of these, it's easy to collect 100 ideas from each of these boxes. So I would end up with 400 ideas. So how do I find out which ones which are the best ideas to follow, which are the best ideas out of these 400? And what I see in a lot of companies is this hippo syndrome, like highest paid person's opinion. This is something I think each company has to heavily fight. You have to get away from taking decisions based on opinion towards taking decisions based on facts. And this is when all this early testing, validation stuff like kicks in. But this is before you start an actual innovation project, right? So we only start an innovation project once we validated the idea and we are sure that there's a market and a need for this. And we do that based on facts, not on opinions. So this was a brief walkthrough through the key elements of our innovation management landscape. What you see down here is the part of innovation culture, right? I will not venture into this because of limited time and it would like blow everything. It is the basis for everything you do inside innovation. You have to motivate your colleagues that new stuff is cool and it is fun to innovate and it's not a threat. Right? Without a decent innovation culture, you will never become an innovation leader. That's clear. So coming to an end, let me just wrap it up. We have a steering where we develop a clear picture of the future. We gather information outside the common grounds. We build an open innovation ecosystem. And we do have a standardized fact-based decision process. These are the tricks we have to enable innovation at Vilo. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Sven, for a great introduction and explanation of the innovation landscape at Vilo. Really appreciate it. And I could see there's a lot of stuff going on in the chat, and we'll wrap up on all the great questions there. And we'll have a Q&A session. But first we have case 2, namely Kanthal. From Sweden, where Anders Wikström, who is a senior researcher at RISE, and Jesper Ehrenstam, who's senior R&D engineer at Kanthal, will present Kanthal's experience within this field.
Yes, thank you very much, René, and nice to be part of this nice setting. And thank you, Sven, for the nice presentation of your case. So Jesper and I will have actually a conversation about the things that they've been doing at Kanthal, as we met a few years ago in a research project I was initiating, and got a really good connection, and we've been working together for the last 4 years actually on different activities and actions regarding building knowledge and competence within Kanthal, and also as a kind of back and forth in between. It's like it's much for me as well as for Jesper to kind of learn from each other in this field. So please, Jesper, just introduce yourself a bit.
Yeah, I hope you can hear me loud and clear. Jesper Ehrenstam. I have this sort of generic title, senior R&D engineer. It could mean a lot of things, but as you hear, I work at the R&D department at Kanthal. I will introduce what Kanthal is in a minute. I've been with the company for 5 years now, but before that I worked with the company when I was doing my PhD. I looked into materials for next generation nuclear reactors. That's another story for another presentation. But I ended up here at Kanthal working with materials development, but also I'm responsible for our sort of innovation program, and I also have a PhD student working on machine learning for industrial processes. So I'm a little bit all over the place, but I think innovation is sort of the key sort of center point in what I do.
Yeah, perfect. And being all over the place is like being in the right place when it's about innovation, I would say. So
yeah.
Jesper,
I'll try to share my screen.
And also please tell us a bit about Kanthal as well, so you can so we can start the conversation afterwards.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I hope you see my screen now.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. So basically, what Cantel is, we're working in heating technology, electrical heating technology, and then you see there's medical there as well, and that's a part of our company where we can use our not the same materials, but the production methods to produce fine wires for various applications in the medical industry. Could be pacemakers and so on. But the key thing is heating technology, and the company was founded by this guy Hans von Kantzow 90 years ago. So we're celebrating 90 years this year, and the name of the company is sort of a wordplay between his name, as you see there, von Kantzow, and the small city outside Västerås in Sweden, where we are located, our headquarters is located. So you put those together, you get Cantel. And what he came up with back in the days, it's one of those classic things, you know, when you leave something in a furnace, or you know, something happens, and then you come back and you see something unexpected happened, right? So it wasn't planned or anything that he would figure something out, and it seems like serendipity, and maybe it was, but nothing really happened with this material for quite some time. He was working in another company, and then while that sort of visiting customers, working with heating systems, he realized that his new material could be a much better solution to solve their problems, basically. And from that knowledge, he sort of looked at his previous invention, and he formed a company then, Cantel, 90 years ago. And just to sort of put this in your minds, what we do. If you look in your toaster in the morning, you know, the glowing wire, that's the material we produce. Same goes with a hairdryer. We don't typically sell to appliances today. It's largely industrial heating solutions, so large heat treatment furnaces in the car industry and so on. And basically, when it comes to our products, we produce the material. We don't produce furnaces like that. We produce the material. So we have a big melt shop here in Hallstahammar. We produce the material, and then we produce the final products. Could be wire, it could be strip. We also have what we call the heating systems, where we actually produce the heating elements, as you see there on the second picture. We also have produced the sort of insulation fiber, and we can build these modules that we can sell to furnace builders, basically. And then thirdly, you see the medical fine wire there. That it's very closely, you know, the production methods are similar to our heating industry, heating products as well. So we produce that in Florida, in the US. We do have some systems as well that we produce, sort of parts of furnaces for the solar industry and the silicon wafer industry, where there are high demands on very precise heating. So our very sort of premium products go into those type of furnaces. So yeah, that's what we do. Not so much toasters today, but you know, more this type of products, I would say. Moving along, we are part of Sandvik, big company, about 40,000 employees. But Cantel is a smaller subsidiary of the materials division. But we are, you can find us anywhere in the world, as you see here on the map, basically. And we are, you know, very big on electrical heating, and it happens to be that, you know, with electrification all over the world, all processes want to become electric. You want to move from fossil, from natural gas heaters into electrical heaters. So innovation is and will be very important for us going forward when the world is electrifying. I want to end with this one, because if someone from Cantel send you an email, you will see this in the bottom of the signature. You see where you find innovation, you find Cantal. So I think that's a good point to stop at for our continuous discussion on this. What you would say?
Yeah, I agree with you, and it's a good. So why did you actually come about to explore this? How do we become even more innovative? Since where you find innovation, you find Cantal. It seems like you're already there. So
exactly. Yeah. Well, I don't think there are any companies saying that they are not innovative, right? I mean, everyone today is an innovative, company or working in an innovative company, and it's not like we are not innovative. We have done many good things over the years, and we have produced value for our customers. Clearly, we've been around for 90 years. We do something right, but you need to sort of work on your innovation efforts all the time. So this kind of complacency don't find itself into the organization. And you, Sven, you had a nice slide there on R&D. I'm at the R&D department, right? So I'm in the middle of the onion, if you like. So I need to be able to know what are we going to develop to meet the needs of the market and the customers, and that's not necessarily so easy these days. So I have this some late night thoughts, and well, let's start here. So when I started at Cantal, I knew what I was doing. I was working this sort of material for next generation nuclear reactor. So I had a fairly good understanding of what the needs were there, basically. But I asked my R&D manager here, Dilip, what would our sort of future customers, right? Okay, and current customers, obviously, but current and future customers, futures jobs to be done, if you like that, way of phrasing what the customer is doing. So we had kind of a discussion there, and that's it's not easy to answer that. Let's say we agreed that we need to talk about this more. Also, if we don't know that, how are we going to work towards getting this map of our future customers' future needs, their trends, but also sort of trying to be ahead of the curve, figuring out what are they trying to do, where are they trying to go, what new legislations are there, what should you focus on. So we're going down the rabbit hole here, basically. So in the end, what development activities are we going to focus on? Which one are worthwhile doing? And still we don't really have a good answer there. Also, thinking about risks, it seems like you want to set up a project and you want to minimize risk all the time. So you take these sort of incremental steps all the time, but is that enough? So how are we considering risk? And especially when we have this sort of our vision, electrifying everything in the world and all the heating processes. How are we going to do that if we don't agree on how to manage risk, basically? And this is the kicker. Do we even know what innovation is? Clearly, because it's in our email, but do we really?
Yeah, that's a good question, and that was about this when we actually met like 4.5 years ago, and you were kind of intrigued or interested in the work that I did, and it turned out that you were participating in a research project that actually showed that you're not taking that much risk that you need to take in order to be more radically innovative, and you don't create the conditions for the employees to be able to take these risks and kind of put themselves out there in the cold, so to speak. So that would, the research project that I initiated was maybe one part of how you actually go about understanding and finding your way forward in implementing a more systemic approach to innovation management. But was there anything else, and how did you go about doing these?
Yeah,
more systematical way?
Yeah, what this probably is 4 years ago or something like that. We realized that, okay, we want to have a system where our employees can submit their ideas. And we had an old system, which is basically, you could say, like an Excel database. Someone send an email to someone and it gets stuck in there. And then you have some kind of group of people that looks at these ideas. But you don't have any transparency in that, right? And also, who is working on your ideas and what is happening. So we said that we wanted to at least have some kind of modern, if you like, tool to handle the ideas, because there are a lot of ideas in the organization. We want to capture those, and we want to be able to talk about the ideas in a we're being a global company, so some kind of digital tool that everyone working at Cantal could log in, submit their idea, or contribute to an idea. So at that time, we set up such a system, and we with a Finnish company called Vima. So we're using their tool to sort of keep track of all the ideas coming into the system. So that was the first step that we took to look at the ideas and sort of introduce more transparency into the process.
Yeah, and how did it work? I mean, setting up a new digital system or a tool is one part. So I'm pretty sure that you ended up with a bunch of questions in a row that kind of needed to be handled from that perspective as well.
For sure. One of the first things, I mean, we still work in this way, I would say, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But we realize that it's not R&D that is going to be the driver of this. You talked about this, Sven, as well. It's a company effort, but we are just happen to be the facilitator of the processes as it is. But it's not our process; it's the entire company's process. So we are not the ones taking the decision. So what I proposed was that we need to set up we call it the innovation board, and as I saw that you called it as well, Sven. So it should function as a cross section of the company where we together can take the decisions on what projects to run going forward, and obviously they should be connected to the strategy and so forth. So we set up such a pipeline where we had a small team, including me and my colleague Aaron, and a few others. We would screen the ideas on some basic, is there a need present? Is it in line with the strategy, and so on and so forth? And then we would present to this group, and then we would decide to go or not go, basically. So those are the kind of things we set up, and also we started to publish a lot of articles on our internet on how we're working and basically what innovation is.
So one thing that came out of the study that kind of I run was the climate for innovation at Cantal, and we saw a few flaws or maybe some parts where you are not as good as you need to be able to create innovation, and that was not only within Cantal, that was all the 18 companies that actually participated in the study had low or medium levels on challenge, on freedom, and the psychological safety. And as you mentioned now, the tool in one hand, and the needs and the ideas on the other hand would kind of match together, and an enabler for that matching those things together was the psychological safety. So you needed to kind of work on both the tool, the psychological safety, the need for the need finding in within your customers and within the on a broad sense identify the opportunities out there. So can you kind of elaborate a bit about what were the challenges and how did you work on it, and what did you learn from that perspective?
Sure. Yeah, as you see here on the slide, do we even know what innovation is? I think to a lot of people, it has to be something new. It's an invention. That's what innovation is. So they might be having information on about a current customer need, and that we can solve with a product that we have today. That's not an innovation according to them, because it has to be something new coming out of R&D. So we have been struggling with that, getting to a common language. What is innovation, and what is important in the innovation process? Because we have so many talented colleagues coming up with great solutions. The problem is that we start with the ideas first. We have some, in many cases, quite vague need statement. I wouldn't even call it a need statement. It's just, I have this solution. We could do this. We could do that in various sectors. So you kind of get overwhelmed with new ideas or solutions rather. And you don't have a clear understanding if anyone wants to buy this at all. So it puts a lot of work on our end, on one side, to try to figure that out. And we don't have the, here at R&D, we don't necessarily have that information. So again, this is a company effort. We have one thing with this tool as well is to get closer to the customer by having a tool that our sales representatives can use. And we're trying to inform everyone that you don't need to have a solution. We want to figure out, visiting a customer, talking about installation of a new product or what have you. Maybe you have a conversation of something else they're trying to do that they're struggling with today. Those kind of insights we would like to have in to our system, because we have so many solutions, and there are probably some solutions there that we can join together with this need that we hope to come in to the system. I don't think we need more solutions. That's not the problem. We have so many solutions. We just need to figure out who needs these solutions, basically. And so in general, talking about innovation and coming to a common language on what innovation is something I think, I don't think it's only we that need to do this. A lot of companies need to do that.
Yeah.
And the other thing I would say is that I think innovation and innovation management seems like a side gig, right? So we have, business as usual and our processes, and then we have the innovation projects. So if you're low on resources, you have many projects, or you have something else coming up, these are the projects that tend to, being put on hold, right? And what happens then is that, again, you're not taking the risk that you probably need. It takes a long time. The people that actually submitted ideas will get frustrated. Nothing really happens. Nothing really comes out of this system. So that's a big issue. You need to turn that around, I believe, that to make innovation part of your strategy, and then you build everything on top of that rather than the other way around. So all projects should be founded on the principles on creating value, and then you just have to manage, the levels of risk going forward.
Okay. Oh, that's perfect. So how do you go about doing this? So what's happening right now, and could you tell us a bit more about the challenges that you actually face in this kind of going forward in implementing a more systematical way of doing innovation at Kanthal, and also the kind of the communication part that you're mentioning now, that's so important for you?
Sure. Yeah, but last year, again, coming back to innovation being a side gig, with the pandemic and everything, and we had work time reductions for many of our employees. I think you can guess what happened to the innovation work. It was being put on hold, for sure, and also we didn't get too many new ideas coming in because we didn't have the time, and also we didn't have the time to actually work on those ideas. Maybe that was a sort of a blessing in disguise. We could, go, back to the drawing table, because to us this is an iterative process. We don't have all the answers. We test and see what works, and then we change. We're not afraid of being wrong here, because we know we will be wrong, and we will improve the process, and we try to be as communicative as possible to everyone in the company when we do changes and why we do them and so on, because this is a learning process for us. But one thing is that we have so many ideas, and the risk is that when nothing happened, if you have 100 ideas coming in, and maybe we work with 5 or 10 or something like that, there will be some disappointment. Even though we try to explain why we do things in a certain way, there will be some disappointment. So we will try something else going forward, which is rather like a challenge or a campaign, where we help target a certain area with certain needs, and then we see what we can bring up with that area, and then we focus on that specific area, and then we move on to another challenge to see how that would work later on. So that is something we're working on right now. On the communication side, what we did last year in order to be able to talk to our colleagues is that we started a internal podcast with the theme is innovation. We call it the Kanthal Innovation Podcast, and the purpose is basically to talk about the innovation, various angles of innovation, various various angles of innovation that is interesting to us, and the purpose is to get to this common language. What is innovation? What is it to us? What's important, and what should we focus on? So that's we don't have a goal for that. When is it done? I don't think it ever will be done. It's just we need to talk about innovation a lot more to make it part of our culture.
So it's talking about the innovation is like building your culture from an innovation perspective, and strengthen the parts that you actually were a bit low on in the measurements that we did. I understand that. So if you're going to give maybe one advice to the attendants today, what would that be in relation to kind of implementing a more systematical way of working with innovation?
I think it's the latter part that I said, communication. It's so important that we talk about this in many channels as well. We have this podcast. It has been received very well, and also when I reach out to external experts in the field, they love to come on their show to talk about innovation, and also we get good feedback from the company that, well, can this be innovation as well? For sure. So we're starting to get there, but as I said, we will never be done with the communication. I think that's key. It's like the day I get fed up talking about innovation, that's probably the day when we're starting to get on the right track, because it's so important. And there are other things as well, having top management support. We do have that. We have a very close dialogue with top management, so they are on board. They love what we do with the podcast, doing the communication thing. So I think we're on the right way, but it's a learning process for us, and we don't. I mean, it's an iterative process, and we know we'll fail. We will test out new things, and I think it's great to have someone like you, Anders, to be able to sort of mentor us and help us out, and also test new things based on the research that you're doing and your colleagues are doing. I think that's super worthwhile.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Jesper. And maybe we have some questions, and Renee, you can take it.
Yes, thank you very much, Jesper and Anders. Really appreciate your dialogue around all these things that are surfacing when presenting these things. Yes, Anders, we have a discussion session now, facilitated by our colleague Markus Søbstad Bensnes from Norconsult, who's a senior innovation manager there. And by the way, I think the schedule was that we should end at 3 o'clock. But the good thing is that these days we are online, so we are so mobile, so we could actually eat away the coffee break without having too many enemies on that, because we could just go to the plenary session at 3:10. So Markus, I was hoping that you could perhaps reflect a bit and capture some of the questions that might have surfaced in the chat.
Absolutely, thank you very much, Renee. First of all, great pleasure being here. Very interesting to hear all the presenters share ideas and experiences relating to innovation management systems. I should disclose that I followed the subject as a participating member in the ISO committee, and also as an innovation practitioner for around 10 years. So it's a bit of a passion of mine. So I'm going to have a hard time holding back my own questions here and focusing on the questions from the participants, but I'll do my best. Very briefly, I work as an innovation manager in an engineering company. We are in the process of implementing a system structure in accordance with the ISO 56002, and it's going moderately well. Let's just put it at that. I do recognize some of the experiences some of you have shared in terms of do we really know what innovation is, and also kind of balancing a systemic approach with strategic intent. So for these 13 minutes we have left, Renee, I thought I'd share some initial reflections, and I'll open up with some general questions to the presenters, and I think we'll take it from there. I would urge the participants here to use the chat, raise your hand if you want to participate. Love to hear your voices. So first off, I think both Kantan and Weilo give the impression of having very complex innovation management systems in place. There's a lot of processes going on here. There are a lot of, I think someone wrote in the chat, buttons to push. And I think a question for many people who are just getting into this and starting to think about setting up innovation management systems is, how do you get started? How did you get to where you are now? And what would be good ideas for, what are the questions that you address first? How do you start setting up a more systemic approach to innovation management? And maybe we can hear from you, Sven, first. I mean, it was a very impressive display of processes and functions you had on your slide. I'm sure that didn't take just a few months. It must have been a lot of work going into that. How did you get there, and what would be advice to give to other people who are trying to get to a similar place?
Yeah. Of course, this scheme I showed and the landscape did not develop overnight, and I guess it took us 5 years to get all the bits and pieces together and to find out what works for Wheeler, what is necessary and what not. So where to start, I think, depends on two things. So one thing is where you as an innovation manager see the necessity to start. And the second thing is where your boards, CTOs, wherever see the necessity to start, and then find a common ground. So the higher you get, I guess, the more important it gets to have some kind of KPIs to show the impact of what you're doing. So when you really want to start off, you have to show, like prove that what you're doing is worth the effort. and to find something that is some way measurable, and then to report on that, to outline the impact of your activities. That would be something I think would be worth watching for. But let's bring it in order. First thing, intrinsic motivation from your side. What is it you think the company needs, you should do, and what you're having fun with? In the best scenario, this is the same opinion of your management, top management team, to get their support, and then take it from there.
Thank you, Sven. So what I'm hearing you say when you're talking about KPIs and initiative and enthusiasm about innovation, what makes sense for you to prioritize is also really a discussion about strategy and kind of this balance between having a systemic approach to innovation and pursuing strategic intent. I was wondering maybe if Mats or maybe Magnus would like to comment on that, because yes, of course, the systemic approach is important, but at the same time, clearly for a complex organization, it is not equally promising to prioritize innovation in all areas. So you have to kind of balance approaching it systemically with having a kind of more weighted investment in parts of your organization. How does the research speak to that balance?
Well, that's a very good reflection and question. Of course, as always, we can and should try to handle complexity, but there are also occasions when the complexity is simply too big, and it makes more sense to actually have a more narrow focus. And I think this comes back to really the strategy. It's about choosing. Strategy is very much about choosing what not to do. It's also about saying what innovation is most important and what innovation is probably not really so important, and focus on the former one. And of course, it could also be that if we try to centralize this too much, the picture that Sven showed, that it will be impossible to communicate. And I think that there are, of course, reasons why we create innovation hubs and co-locate people. We know that actually there are certain effects of that can be very important. At the same time, this is, of course, always a trade-off, because if we select and create these innovation hubs, we kind of signal to the rest of the organization that they don't have to care about this. Someone else takes care about this. And this signaling effect, that's also, I mean, as soon as we appoint an innovation manager, some people say, okay, so innovation is handled. It's not handled, and it requires so much effort from everyone. But of course, everyone should not do everything all the time. We need to specialize and we need to focus. So I cannot say what's right for a specific company, but I think you have a point there that even if, of course, the ambition would be to really have a comprehensive and systemic approach, there are practical limitations to communication, to understanding, and just that it basically becomes too divergent. So that's up. It goes like all other activities. We need both specialization and integration.
Magnus, you want to?
Important here, and that already, is that there is no silver bullet solution. You have to adapt to the situation of the organization, and all these frameworks and recipes that are out there, including the standard, they can help you look at things. Could be the bottleneck. What are the areas that you need to address next? And remember, I mean, an innovation management system or a capability in an organization is never complete. It's never installed and done. It's a living process. So there might be weaknesses, and you can live challenge. And as Matt said, the strategy will kind of guide you and direct you. It all depends on what you're aiming to achieve, your ambition and your ambition level, your intent at the outset.
Interesting. I have a colleague that says that a strategy is not a strategy until someone is pissed off, and I think that this is to the nature of prioritization as part of a strategy. I want to move to Kantal and Anders and Jesper. You mentioned the culture and climate for innovation. I think that's also a very important aspect to consider when you're deciding where to invest in innovation and who to involve. You kind of balance strategic intent and the strategic priorities in relation to what areas to prioritize for innovation with the real understanding of where the best environment to innovate is in the organization.
I can start and you can continue, Jesper. What I would say is that I don't think that it's important to actually know and start the initiative where it's the best. It's to start it anywhere, as long as you are aware of the conditions that you have, the climate that you have. Then you can put the resources and the efforts needed to overcome those barriers that the climate actually creates in the organization. So that's one way of looking at it. I mean, just knowing what the conditions, what the climate are, gives you a guiding framework to actually put in effort and activities to overcome them. And that's one way of kind of working through the climate perspective of an organization, I would say. Jesper?
Yeah, I mean, I think most companies are having this problem with silos. So it's difficult to understand, where to work, horizontal over the silos. So I would agree. I don't know where it would start. It depends on what the idea would be that you're working with. You're setting up a new team all the time, basically a new cross-functional team all the time. So that's why I like this the digital tool, because in reality, what will happen is that there will be a new team working on a specific idea when it sort of being entered into the system. And on strategy, I think it's important that innovation is not a separate strategy. It's part of the strategy. And what we did is we included in our company scorecard we want to measure the outcome of the innovation process. But that needs to be handled with care, but because then you're back to this risk again. Do we measure how many ideas that comes in? Then we have some kind of number on how many people are active. Is that what we want to do? Is it completed projects? What does that even mean? We have talked about that, you and me, Anders, quite a lot. A completed project, maybe it's learnings. We have 10 new learnings or whatever it is. Is that what we are measuring? Is it sort of new product development? Is it that? That might be, that's a lagging indicator. That will be, down the road. Maybe it's how the company, how well we as a company understands innovation. I'm not sure. That is something we need to work on. We do have some KPIs now. I'm not sure they are the right ones, and we will continue to discuss that going forward.
Thank you very much, Jesper. I'm very aware of our limited time, and I know that there are at least one more speaker who wants to say a few words about a very interesting platform. So I'm just going to have to end it there. I would urge all speakers to check the chat for questions directly at them, and to answer those questions in the chat or via email. Thank you again very much for a very interesting discussion. I'm sure we could have gone on for at least an hour. So hope to talk to many of you again.
That's a very good way to round it off, Marcus. Thank you so much. And I'm sorry to have to interrupt you, but this great discussion, because this could definitely be bringing a lot of good stuff to the table. But we have to go to the plenary, the panel discussion in a few minutes from now. But I just wanted to take few minutes together with Ingrid about the way forward. So Ingrid, I was hoping that you could tell a bit about the future work and also the invitation to get on board in this interesting work.
Well, actually, I'm going to repeat what you said in the introduction. We work with this international collaboration platform to gather research and practice to really exchange knowledge and experience-based experiences around implementing innovation management system. And right now we are establishing this platform. We are prototyping, testing, how can this knowledge sharing be done? How can it be done? So what you see on the screen is the seminar series that we try in this phase, where this is one of the sessions where we have interesting cases presented. And another way we are working is also to raise the awareness with publications, and Matt mentioned the book with cases where we have both Cantal and Wilo as cases in that book. So with this, we do have a seminar in the end of June, and we have a closing seminar for this establishment phase of the platform, trying to summarize the implications that we have been sharing in these sessions. So what we are aiming at, having the learnings from having these seminars and knowledge session, how to scale up, to open up, to do a larger platform, and open platforms. That is the invitation I extend for a people organization interested in sharing knowledge, perhaps engage in a research study, being an object, be studied in this, listening to other interesting cases. So that's the invitation for the next phase, where we open up the platform even more. And I would like to thank the participants and René and his team for hosting this seminar. Thank you very much.
Very much appreciated, and thank you for participating all. Just as a small add-on, I don't want to take too much time now. This is also open for we heard two relatively large companies present now in this session. Really interesting, but this is also a platform that is open to public sector actors and public organizations. So that's always important to remember as well. Now, reach out to Ingrid and me if you want to learn more. And thank you so much for taking your time for this fantastic track. So stay safe out there.